The thread you thought was wasted is still being held in my hands. Not lost on the floor where it fell. Not cut off and thrown away. Not too tangled for any maker to use. Hear me clearly before these words are finished, because everything else rests on it. This is not God calling your pain good. This is God promising that pain will not get the final word. I will never insult what you have suffered by pretending it was secretly a gift. I am telling you instead that the cut thread is still in my hands and that the story is still being held. There is a question you have carried under everything lately. A question you have not quite let yourself say out loud. If my hand is really woven through all of it, why does so much of it look like a mistake? Stay near. I am not going to leave you alone with that question. As these words go on, I want to bring you back to one line. My word laid down long ago for the ones who could only ever see the back of the loom. A line you can stand on when the tangled side is the only side your eyes can find. There is no rush in this. You can set down the part of you that always feels it has to perform the moment things go quiet. Nothing here is being graded. No one is keeping a tally of how well you rest, least of all me. I know what you have been doing in the long hours. You turn the cloth of your life over and over, looking for the side that finally makes sense. Your eye finds the loose ends first. It lands on the place where one color was cut short before it could finish. A knot sits right in the middle of the years you wanted most. The ones that did not go the way you planned. And you keep returning to it the way a tongue keeps returning to a sore tooth. And quietly in the dark, you reached a conclusion you have never spoken to a single soul. The conclusion was that the whole thing is ruined. That whoever was supposed to be making something out of your days got distracted or gave up or never truly began. Hear this first before I answer any of it. I heard that conclusion the night it first formed in you, when the house was silent and the silence felt like a verdict. It has never once been hidden from me, and it has never, not for a moment, made me turn away from you. The conclusion rarely shows up looking like despair. It comes dressed as honesty. It tells you it is only facing facts. It says that hoping again would be foolish. That you are simply protecting yourself. That you have been let down before and you are merely being wise. Now, underneath the reasonable voice, though, sits an old wound, and the wound is the thing actually doing the talking. Watch how quietly it has shaped your days. You stopped asking for the thing you most wanted, not because the wanting died, but because you decided in advance the answer would be no. You learned to brace before good news instead of opening your hands to it. You hold the people who love you a little farther off than you need to, keeping one palm free to shield yourself because the cloth taught you that closeness is only a thread waiting to be snipped. None of that is a flaw in your character. It is a wound behaving the way wounds behave. It is a self that learned to survive a loom it could only ever view from behind. I am not here to scold the survival. I am here to tell you the loom is not what fear has convinced you it is. So let the muscles of your face loosen for a breath. If your jaw has been set tight, let it come unclenched. You may not have felt how long you have been holding it. That small release is not weakness, and it is not surrender. It is simply the posture in which a tired person can finally notice a hand that has been near them the whole time. The hand was always there. The clenching just kept you from feeling it. There's a thread in you that got cut, and you know exactly which one. A relationship that ended before you were ready. A door that closed in the very year you were sure would finally be yours. A color in your cloth that came out darker than you ever wanted. A season of grief woven straight through what should have been your brightest decade. The one of you raising a child alone knows the thread. I mean the widow who still reaches for the phone before remembering knows it. The one who poured a whole self into a marriage that came apart anyway knows it. And the one who keeps an entire household running while no one counts the cost knows it best of all. You are not reading a stranger's letter. My word was written with each of these in mind. And so were these few minutes. There are smaller threads, too. The ones you never grieve out loud because they feel too ordinary to name. The role that went to someone else. The friendship that simply faded. The plan you built with such hope that quietly fell apart while no one was watching. The body that no longer does what it once did. The prayer you carried for years that seemed to land on nothing. You do not weep over these the way you weep over the great losses. Yet they have done their slow work on you all the same. Teaching the same lesson the big ones taught. That hope is dangerous. That wanting leads to losing. That the cloth cannot be trusted. And here is what fear talked you into doing with that cut thread. You built your whole picture of me around it. You took the single most painful place in the cloth and made it the lens you read everything through. Because that thread was severed, you decided I must not have been paying attention. Because that color came out dark. You concluded I must not really be good, or at least not good to you. The one loss became the interpreter of all the others. And now even the kind things get filtered through it, examined for the catch, held at arm's length in case they too turn out to be threads that will only be cut later. I am not angry that you did this. I am tender about it the way a father is tender toward a child who flinches at a raised hand because of hands that came before his. You did not invent this way of seeing. It was handed to you in a season nobody helped you carry in a stretch of years. When you had to hold yourself because no one else would. Once you learned it, it stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like the plain truth. It became the only language your pain had. Living that way carries an exhaustion you have stopped even noticing. The way a person stops noticing a weight they have carried so long it feels like part of the body. The low constant watchfulness. The tiredness no sleep can reach. The way you can be surrounded by good things and still sense underneath them that something is about to go wrong. That is the cost of reading your whole life from the back of the loom. It is not that you are ungrateful or faithless. It is that you have been doing the impossible work of judging a picture from the only side that can never make sense, and it has worn you down to the thread. Now let me speak to where the lens actually came from, because it did not appear out of nowhere. You were taught early to imagine me as a maker who only works with the parts of you that are already presentable. A craftsman who waits until your threads are clean and straight and worthy before he will so much as touch them. The version of me you inherited handed you the idea that the broken places, the knotted places, the frayed and shameful places are exactly the parts one want nothing to do with. The parts you must repair yourself in private before you are allowed to bring the cloth back and ask me to keep working. That is not who I am. That has never for one moment been who I am. Look closely at the picture you carry. And you can almost see whose hands painted it. Some of it came from people who loved you in the only way they knew. But who spoke of me the way they spoke of everything, with conditions attached, with approval that had to be earned again each week. Some of it came from a place where you were quietly taught your worth was something you rented, never owned. And the heaviest part came from your own heart, which learned very young that love was kept by performing well, and simply assumed I must work like every other love had worked. Set that picture down for a minute. It is heavier than you realized. And every line of it is false. The maker you are actually dealing with reaches for the not first, not last, after everything else is tidy. First, the frayed end is not the part one avoid until you have cleaned it. It is the part one pick up. There has not been a single moment in your whole life when I waited for a thread to be spotless before I would weave with it. The very thread you are most ashamed of. The one you would cut out of your story if I handed you the scissors. Is a thread these hands have been working into the design all along on the hidden face of the cloth. And here is the thing. My word presses against everything the old lens taught you. You read the tangle as evidence that I am absent. The tangle as evidence that I am present and working. A loom with nothing crossing on the back is a loom with no picture on the front. Empty thread, empty cloth. The knots you keep apologizing for are not the failure of the design. They are part of its structure, the places where the whole thing holds. Pull them out and the picture unravels. Your hardest places are load-bearing. Picture what the real maker is actually like. So the false image has something true to stand in its place. He does not flinch at the mess on the back of the loom because he is the one who knows what it is becoming. He is patient in a way that has nothing to prove and nothing to rush. He does not weave in straight lines only because a cloth of straight lines alone has no depth. Nothing for the light to play against. He works slowly on purpose because beautiful things are seldom the fast ones. And he hums over the work the way someone hums over labor they love. You have heard that humming in moments you could not explain. A sudden unaccountable peace in the middle of a hard week. That was not nothing. That was the maker near the loom. Glad about a pattern you cannot see yet. He is not standing across the room with folded arms, waiting for you to clean up your own threads before he will deign to begin. He leans over the loom, close to it, close to you, the way a parent leans over a sleeping child for no reason except love. That is the nearness you have been missing. Not distance, not disappointment. Delight in a work that is going exactly where he means it to go. If this message found the place in you that needed it, write held in the comments as a small way of marking the truth you are choosing to hold today, not as a slogan. And not to perform a belief you do not yet feel. Leave it as one honest stitch. Set down where another tired person can see it and know they are not the only one staring at the back of the loom. And while you are there, you will find 7 short letters waiting in the pinned comment above this one for each of the next 7 mornings. Take them. They were written for the part of you that turned the cloth over again last night. Now, let me bring you somewhere because I do not only want to tell you this is true. I want to show you it was written down long before you were born. And I want you to see the kind of people it was first written for. So you will know it was never meant for the strong. There was a small gathering of believers in a city called Rome holding a letter in their hands. See them as they actually were, not as they appear in some painting on a high wall. They were not famous. They were not powerful. Many of them met in borrowed rooms because they had nowhere of their own. Some had lost their work the moment their faith became known. Some had lost family who would no longer speak their name. A number of them were slaves who would walk back to their masters' houses the moment the gathering ended, back to lives they had not chosen and could not leave. They had every earthly reason to look at the cloth of their lives and see only the underside. Loss crossing loss. Cut thread over cut thread. Picture the evening the letter was read. The light would have been poor. An oil lamp. Maybe 2. The room crowded. And warm and quiet. The one reading aloud was likely as tired as you are. And into that room, into those exact hands, a single sentence had been placed on purpose for them and through them across the long centuries. For the one sitting where you are sitting now, these were not people who could pretend the dark threads were not real. The losses were too plain, too recent, too present in the room. The empty chair where someone used to sit. The letter that would never come from a family that had cut them off. And still my word asked them to trust that all of it, every cut and every knot was being worked together for good by hands they could not see. It did not ask them to deny the underside. It asked them to trust the other side existed. That is the same thing being asked of you now. Not to pretend the cloth is clean. To trust that the maker is real and near and good and working even when all you can see is the back. What those tired believers had, the powerful of their day did not. They had a maker who had come down into the very mess of the loom himself, who had taken thread and dust and human pain into his own hands and called it worth redeeming. The mighty of Rome had their marble and their armies and their certainty, and almost none of it survived. These ones in their borrowed rooms holding their poor lamps and their grief, and this letter held a promise that has outlasted the empire that crushed them. The cloth they could not see is finished now. They are inside the front of it. And the sentence they stake their tired hearts on is the same one being offered to yours. It was not written for scholars to frame and admire. It was written for the slave who knew he would not be free in this life. For the widow who had buried more than she could bring herself to count. For the one whose thread was cut in the year that was supposed to be theirs. For the ones who had stopped praying out loud because the words had grown too heavy to lift. In other words, it was written for you. This is what my word says. Romans 8 verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Stay with each word slowly now, because every one of them was chosen for someone exactly as worn out as you are. In all things, read that again. Not in some things. Not only in the clean things and the easy ones, the threads that happen to run straight. In all things, including the cut one, including the color that came out dark, including the knot you are certain ruined, the whole design. There is no thread in your life so afraid, no loss so deep, no failure so private that it falls outside of all things. All means all. The word leaves nothing of yours on the outside. God works. Notice the tense of it. Present and continuing. Not worked once and then finished and walked off. Not set the loom running and left it to become whatever it would. The hands are on the cloth now this minute on the side you cannot see. While part of you stays half convinced the work stopped years ago. Those hands were on it last night while you slept. They are on it as you breathe for the good. Go carefully here, because this is where the old way of hearing trips you. The sentence does not say every thread is good. The cut one was not good. The grief was not good. The betrayal, the closed door, the loss that hollowed out a whole year of your life. None of those taken alone were good. And I will never insult your pain by pretending they were. Read what is actually written. The threads are worked together for good. There is a vast difference between those two things. And the difference is the entire promise. A single strand of dark wool means nothing on its own. It is only darkness. But woven against the right colors, set in the right place by hands that see the whole design at once, that dark thread becomes the very thing that makes every bright one around it shine. I do not call your suffering good. I do not offer your wounds in order to bless you later. I take what was done to you, what was lost, what broke, and I refuse to let it be the end of the story. Weaving even that into a good my love has wanted for you all along. And then the part you keep skipping past the last clause. Those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This is not a promise drifting in the open air for no one in particular to claim. It is a promise with a name woven through it. And the name is yours. Whether or not love and calling have felt true to you in the last week, the last month, the last year, the promise does not rest on how the cloth feels to your fingers on a hard day. It rests on whose hands are holding it. Sit with one word in that line. Purpose. There is a purpose. The cloth is going somewhere. It is not a random heap of thread thrown together by chance and bad luck and the cruelty of strangers. It is a work with an intention behind it, a destination, a finished picture that already exists in the mind of the one weaving it. You have been living as though your life were an accident you have to manage. Damage you have to limit, a mess you are responsible for keeping from getting worse. That is the heaviest part of the back of the loom view. The belief that no one is steering. Hear me clearly. It is not merely happening to you. It is being woven with purpose toward good by love. Notice too that the only condition named in the whole promise is love and calling. Not performance, not getting it right, not finally healing, not understanding the pattern. You do not have to comprehend the cloth to be one of those it is being woven for. You do not have to feel strong or grateful or even hopeful on a given day. The promise reaches the ones who simply belong to the Maker. And you belong. You have belonged since before the first thread of you was ever set on the loom. The reason all of it can be worked for good. Even the part that broke something in you that has not fully mended is not that the broken part stopped hurting. It is that my son took the deepest cut into his own body so that no severed thread in your life would ever again be the final word of your story. Look at the cross for a moment with the eyes I'm giving you. From the underside of the loom, it looked like total ruin, like the whole design had been torn apart and thrown away, like good itself had lost. And in that very place, the most beautiful cloth in all of history was being woven. The knot through which everything good would finally hold. If that, the darkest, most ruined-looking thread there has ever been, could be made the center of all that is good, then the knot in your own small handful of years is not too dark for these hands. Now look back at the question buried at the very beginning. If my hand is really in all of it, why does so much of it look like a mistake? Here is the answer. And take it in slowly. Because it changes how you will see everything you have been grieving. It looks like a mistake because you have only ever been allowed to see the back of the loom. From where you stand on the underside, even the most carefully woven cloth in the world looks like chaos. Crossed threads, loose ends going nowhere, knots that seem to serve no purpose. That is not because the weaver failed. That is what every great work looks like from behind. You were never meant to judge the worth of your life from that.